So it's lovely to see you here tonight. We've got various things for you. And first of all, I'd like to introduce us to you. So I'm Lorraine Webb. I'm the Programme Officer for Children and Youth Work, and I'm based at Church House. And I work there with a small team, which includes my colleague, Sharon. Sharon, can you give us a wave? So
hello, everyone.
Sharon's the programme assistant, which is a wonderful job. She's a really valued member of the team. And then we've got some of our Sido Plus team, our experts from around the country. So if I go from my screen clockwise, we've got Judy, who's for the Sido for the National Synod of Wales. We've got Hannah, who is the children's, I always forget Hannah.
Children's Advisor in Northern Synod.
Children's Advisor in Northern Synod. And we've got Megan, who is the Children's Practitioner, is that right? For Yorkshire Synod. We were hoping also to have my colleague Jess Poole, who is she's the Children's Advisor in Scotland, National Synod of Scotland, but unfortunately she's trapped in traffic and can't get here at the moment. So we're going to have to just sort of cover her for her while she's not here. There will be lots of chance for questions later. We're going to have some breakout rooms when you'll have access to, in smaller groups, to the people who are here. To ask your questions, and if they can't answer them, then they'll sort of pass it on to somebody else who hopefully can. We're going to talk you a little bit through some of our sort of tips for running a holiday club, for setting up a holiday club. We're going to introduce you a little bit to the holiday club materials that we've been involved in writing for this year. So that's Timetravellers. And then we'll have some breakout rooms, as I said, and we'll come back together to feedback, to share the things that have been issues for people, and maybe to ask you for your top tips on what you would think would be some helpful advice for people thinking of running a holiday club. And then we'll round off with a little bit of prayer, which Sharon's going to lead for us at the end of the session. So I hope that's all nice and clear and straightforward for you. One thing that I will mention right now, which I'm sure you will find interesting, is that our small grants fund has been extended last year and this year to offer a small grant of either £50 or £100 towards churches running holiday clubs. If you applied for it yet last year, please do apply again. We have got limited funds, so preference will be given to people who haven't had any funding before, but that doesn't mean that you won't get it. It means that you will be considered, and when the pot runs dry, we'll have to stop giving it to those people who've had it before. But please do, if you're running a holiday club, we'll ask you to give us a little bit of feedback afterwards. We'll ask you maybe to help us with some photographs if you're able to, but there are no real strings attached. It's to help with things like snacks and craft materials and things like that, because we all know that holiday clubs can cost quite a bit of money to put on. Okay, so with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Hannah and to Sharon, who are going to talk a little bit about running holiday clubs generically. So the sort of things that you might want to think about if you've not done one before, or if you've not done one for a long time. So I'll hand over first of all to Hannah.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's great to have you here. Okay. So the first thing is, if you're thinking of doing a holiday club for the first time, or you're thinking of restarting holiday clubs, the best thing I would say to you initially is have a look at what is happening in your locality. see what has already been arranged, because you don't want to go head to head with the local school that has the best football coaches, etc., that particular week that you're running your holiday club. So see what's happening already and then choose your optimum time. There is no guarantee you're going to have the same children, but it's always good to give as much choice and variety to all children and families as possible. The next thing is bring your group of volunteers together. These are individuals who are personally worth their weight in gold. They are the bricks and mortar of your holiday club. Get to know the people if you don't already know them. Have a discussion, find out what their skills are and their strengths are. It might be that some of them have an absolutely burning passion to work with younger children, but are a little bit tentative with the sort of maybe 10 to 11-year-olds and vice versa, and something in between. You might have some who are just gifted to do games and sport, while other people are more than happy sitting at a craft table. So get to know your team. Obviously, it goes without saying that if you don't know these members, you would need references and you would need to DBS them ahead of your holiday club. Okay, so within your team of volunteers, it's really good practice to have at least one person who is first aid approved and can apply first aid if it's needed. The next question to that is, if you're using a church, check your first aid box, because it can guarantee when you need it. If you haven't, there's probably going to be very little inside it. Check that and check you've got your accident report book, because you'll need to fill that in if somebody even bumps their head these days. Next thing is a bit of a fire safety. Know where your fire evacuation systems are, how to get out of a building, and in the event of needing to evacuate your building, who will take the lead to take the first group of children out, who will do a sweep of the building and be the last person out. Yes, these sound like trivials and you're never going to need them. In 26 years of holiday clubs, I never have, but I always have my fire marshals on hand if needed. Okay, so who's going to do welcoming? This is the most integral part to your holiday club. This is where the shy children come in and sometimes are peeled from their mother's arms and aren't too certain, but boy, within 10 minutes, they're lapping it up and they're loving that holiday club. So welcoming is a really key role to making people who come into your building feel relaxed. The next crucial team are your caterers. These are the people who are going to keep you fueled with your coffee during the course of your 2-hour holiday club session. These are the people who are patiently going to pour out the squash and juice and make sure that the right children get the right type of biscuit if required, or fruit. It's integral. These people are really worth their weight in gold. And it's always good to have someone who's appointed just to check the toilets. No taps have been left running, and the toilets are as you would like to find them. Okay, so maybe you have someone in your team who is musical, and as we have our songs, might want to give you a live rendition of these fantastic songs that have been brought together for us. It's always good to get your team together, talk through what the holiday club is going to be about, allow them to have an insight to all aspects and participate. Let them put their ideas on the table as well. They don't have to come and have everything prescribed. They're there to share their key assets, make them feel part of the team and use them. At the start of every holiday club session, you gather your team together a good 20 minutes, if not more, than the children and families arrive. You talk through your each morning session or afternoon session. You have time to look at the biblical input and time to pray together. You want to centralize all you're doing with God. At the end of each session, do a team debrief. This is invaluable. If a person's had a particular issue, it's good that these can be unpacked, these can be dealt with and resolved for the next session to come. And always end with a blessing and build the team up, thanking them for giving their time. It's really good to be thanked. We all like it. So much nicer than getting a snub, don't you think? Okay, so the other things to consider are, if you're doing your holiday club, wherever it may be, you need to do a risk assessment. Now, your church might be familiar territory to you, but to a new child coming into the building, oh my goodness, this is an exciting place full of curiosities and places that they want to delve into, things they might want to touch. You might be using the room or the church hall in the morning, and you might find that there's another group coming in the afternoon, or that willing church secretary or caretaker just uses that spare afternoon to prop his ladders up and do a bit of DIY. Every time you go into your holiday club setting, you need to risk assess. Are there any hazards? Anything to trip on, anything that could topple, anything that shouldn't be where it ought to be? Remember, children are curious beasts and they can get their fingers in far more places than we would deem necessary. Okay, so also need to check. The other thing I would say is, if you're having a Zoom holiday club, ensure that everybody who can access it has roaming data. Not every parent can use the data on their phone if they haven't got a laptop. And also be aware of where you're going to do your Zoom sessions from. It's great if you've got a space, but you don't want somebody walking behind you or your child sitting there with their finger up their nose behind you, because everybody starts watching them and not what you're trying to share at a holiday club. And also ask your families as well to be mindful of background noise, of comments. Nobody wants to hear a parent having a rant down the telephone with a friend while their child is still watching on Zoom. It's not really too PC, really, is it? Okay, the other thing to be aware of as well is, if you're going to Zoom, you're going to have craft bags that you're going to have to drop off for your families so that they can access what's required as well for the holiday club. So that takes some careful planning and prep. If you're going to have an outdoor holiday club, amazing. Wow, what a joy. Make sure where you're housing your holiday club outside is safe. You don't want to have a busy main road where children could wander to. If you've got a gate or fence around your perimeter area, make sure you've always got a steward or somebody who's prepared to marshal the gate to make sure nobody gets out. Make sure as well, yes, you still have to risk assess that outdoor space, because, you know, somebody might have dropped some litter in there. There could be broken glass, and woe betide, somebody's allowed their dog to go in there and foul. That's the last thing you want to be dealing with on a holiday club. So these are the things that we have to think about to stay safe. These are the things that are important to us. Let's think about the surfaces outside as well. Are they gravel? Are they grass? Are they paved? Think about the children who may be coming to your holiday club. Some of them might have assisted limitations. Perhaps walking isn't comfortable. Maybe they're in a wheelchair. A gravel area could be really difficult to them. So let's just make sure that everybody can come together and enjoy their time together. And just one last thing, if you're outdoors, consider a plan B. We do want a sunny summer. We want to be able to enjoy the time outside, but it's also good to have a second idea just in case the weather is inclement. We don't want to dampen people's resolve, excitement and joy. So consider a gazebo, or just consider having an alternative venue should the weather not be as we would wish it. But in the main, have fun, enjoy, and make those wonderful connections with your families.
Thank you, Hannah. And I'll just say that a lot of the information that Hannah and Sharon are sharing with you, which comes from, I would say, years of experience of running holiday clubs themselves, as well as advising, those ideas are also included in our Time Travellers material. So you'll be able to find some of those. I'll show you later where to look. And now I'll hand over to Sharon.
Thank you. So really, I'm just going to briefly go over some areas that help to keep you, yourself, your volunteers, and the children that come and participate safe while they're with you, and to ensure that everyone has a positive experience, a holiday club that is accessible for all, really. So if we start with thinking about safeguarding, the first place really to look is to see what policy your church or place where you are will have. And if you're not sure of your churches, I'm just going to put a link in the chat that you can follow to the one on the URC that will give you some guidance about this. but the church policy is the best place to go to. As Hannah said, all volunteers that are over 18 need to be DBS checked. And I know there is a safer recruiting sort of system that can be followed for volunteers that you don't know. All volunteers, it would be good if they're able to have the training. They need to have the safeguarding training that the church is offering. And it is good practice that any of your volunteers are sort of together, always together. So there are going to be situations where you might suddenly find that a volunteer could go off on their own, taking a child to the toilet, for instance, but it is good practice and keeps everybody safe if you think of this beforehand and just have something in place already on deciding how you're going to go, two people together, and to have separate toilets so that the children's toilets are separate from the adults' toilets. You might also find that you're going to have a timeout area or sort of a quiet space. That too might require you to take a child to, and so again you would need to think through having somebody, having two people with you. And one of the most important things as well, I think, is no matter the relationship that any of the volunteers have with the children, whether they're known to them or not known to them, there should not be any hugging or kissing, sitting on laps. You know, sometimes in holiday clubs, volunteers can have their own children there, or grandparents can have their grandchildren, might be children you know from the church, but yet it is still not advisable for any sort of contact such as hugging, kissing, sitting on laps. Kind of safeguarding extends as well to photography. It's really brilliant to be able to photograph your holiday club. And we particularly like you to share it with Church House, URC Church House. However, you do need to make sure that you've got signed permission from your families that they're happy for those photos to be taken, and it needs to be really quite specific about what you're going to do with those photographs as well, where they're going to be seen. And it's good to designate somebody to be that photographer, for them to have a badge so everybody knows who they are. And that no photographs should be taken on anyone's personal mobile phone, and that the photo should really only be shared through the church's social media or through the URC Church House, as I described. But this is where the detail in when you write it, the permission slips, that's where the detail needs to come in, so that the families are very aware of where those photos are going to be shared. So, and then comes the issue of then the photographer knowing who can have a photo and who can't. So again, that's something you need to consider beforehand. Sometimes if they've got labels, you can have a little coloured dot or something on there to just so that the photographer knows who can be in the photos and who can't. It's really quite important. If we then think about behaviour within the holiday club, and this again, if your church doesn't have its own behaviour policy, or perhaps you might already have one for other children's groups that you might be able to adapt yourselves or create one, or again follow the link and find something helpful on the good practice policy and procedures for the URC. But it really should include the behaviour of not just what you might do in different situations where the children are concerned, but also the kind of conduct that you expect from your volunteers as well within the setting. And then of course you need to make sure all the volunteers have seen it and know what it is that you're all adhering to. It's good to have someone who's the sort of that you've signposted to be the behaviour sort of person, if you like, someone that you can go to, or that someone can go to and get some advice, or if somebody does need to go to a quiet space, then you have someone already allocated to help to oversee that. And it is good to have a quiet space for different behaviours, because some children can be very overwhelmed by lots of different situations. It's good to have some good practice, to have some golden rules up, maybe 4 or 5 little rules of we will have good hands, we will have helpful hands, maybe things like that, rather than we won't. But again, like Lorraine said, a lot of these things you can find within the material online. I would suggest as well that you make any notes of anything that families might put on your forms. So when you do have forms for the families to sign up, that there is a space to put if there's anything they'd like you to know. Sometimes they might put about different behaviours that their child that they would like you to know about. And, you know, if there's anything on there, you can liaise with the parents and see how best you can meet the needs of that child and that family, which then leads us nicely into additional needs, which very similar kind of things, really. Your aim for your holiday club should be to be as accessible as possible. So thinking through how you're going to use the space that you have. If you've got rooms that you're going to use upstairs, and think through, will that be accessible for everybody, or what could you do differently? Could you have it downstairs? There's so many different things that you could consider, sensory issues as well as mobility. And really the aim is not to exclude anybody, but to try and make everything as accessible as you can. Again, having a designated person is quite helpful. You might know someone who has a special skill in that area, but definitely someone who, again, your volunteers can go to if necessary. And again, like I say, if you have on the forms and you detail it so that you're asking them for specifics about any health or medical issues that they'd like to share with you, because they won't always, but if they'd like to share with you, then that's when you can try and make sure you meet their needs, and you can liaise with the parents and perhaps ask them how best to meet their needs. And lastly, I'd say it's really good to consider having training for the volunteers for additional needs and behaviour, really, just sort of like strategies, bit of top tips, and what your volunteers can perhaps expect from children, and why their behaviour is perhaps as it is, and what strategies there are to help deal with it. So yes, like I say, these things are just there to help keep you and your volunteers and everyone as safe as possible, really. But most things you should be able to find on the website.
And just picking up on that point, there are on our YouTube channel 2 training sessions that I did with our non-uniformed organisation pilots, with their leaders, on behaviour and on additional needs. It's sort of my pet subject. So my email address is lorraine.webb@urc.org.uk, and you can always, if you have questions, drop me a line. I worked for many years in special school, so I have a lot of experience with children with additional needs and children with challenging behaviour. So you're always welcome to contact me. So thank you, Sharon and Hannah, for those things. I will say, we haven't put generic risk assessments into our Time Travellers material this year, but we did put it into our Super Sleuths material for last year. So I will show you that in a moment, because that's useful to know. So, Time Travellers, you had your own experience of travelling in time a few moments ago when I did the breakout rooms and accidentally created them straight away. You heard the music at the start, which is our theme tune. We're going on a journey. We've put together, now this is our second holiday club materials, and we did it really in response to churches saying that they found it difficult to find people who had the time to prepare things, who had the confidence to deliver things. So we felt that we wanted to put something together which had everything you might need in it. So if you've got people, for example, who aren't confident doing drama, that we have something that you can use instead. If you've got people who aren't confident with storytelling, that we model a few different ways of telling stories. If you are concerned about risk assessments, we've got everything that you need there so that you can access it straight away. So it's all on our website. The material is not prescriptive, however. If you have the enthusiasm or the creativity to want to do your own thing and pick and choose from it, please, we're not saying you've got to follow this. stringently from beginning to end. We're not saying you've got to do a 5-day holiday club. Last year we had groups that did 1 day, that did a whole day, or who did 3 of the days that worked well for them. You don't have to do it in the summer. Why restrict yourself to doing a summer holiday club when you could maybe do it in October, give you a bit more prep time, or that you could maybe do a day or a couple of days during a weekend. So let me show you what we've got. So I just need to click that and that and that and show you the United Reformed Church website. If you go to Your Faith, Families, Children and Young People, and then go through to Children and Youth Work, there it is. There's Time Travellers. I'm just going to show you Super Sleuths first. This was last year's holiday club. And if you scroll down here towards the bottom, you will find things like a sample registration form, a sample consent form, register, accident forms, and so on. So some of those things that Hannah and Sharon have spoken about. So those are in Super Sleuths. But if we go back and into Time Travellers, you will see our resource. Time Travellers is linked to our Jubilee theme, which obviously this year is the 50th year of the United Reformed Church, and we are celebrating big time. So we thought that to link with that, we'd look back and look forwards, which is one of the things that we're encouraging people to do at this time. The full resource is a massive file. I recommend not downloading it because it takes forever. But we have split it up into smaller parts. We have a poster which you can use to advertise. This is an editable poster that you can advertise your holiday club with. At the moment it looks very dark. There it is. So if we make it a little smaller, we can see that we've got our lovely time travelling spiral. We also have our music as sheet music and lyrics for you to use. And these songs are also on our YouTube channel, as you saw before, with the words going along with the song. The songs have been written for us, especially for our materials, by Leo Roberts, who's the Sido in Northern Synod. The sections that Hannah and Sharon have covered look at how to run a holiday club, and then there are various different sections that we'll be talking a little bit more about in a moment. So, as I said, we've got a variety of story styles there because we wanted to give you experience of different story styles. And also we have some dramas which are videoed. Now, we haven't got those up yet because we're still waiting for some people to complete their filming, but we do have some on YouTube from last year. So this is the sort of thing that the dramas will look like. Or not. Hold on.
I'm going to tell you a story, but I need your help. In this story, there is a lot of laughter. That's where you come in. When I say laugh, or laughter. I need you to laugh your biggest belly laugh. Let's have a practice. Has anyone ever been to the beach? How many grains of sand were there on the beach? Didn't you count them? What a silly idea, trying to count the grains of sand on the beach. Don't make me laugh.
I think Stephen is the only person I know who has the world's most infectious laugh that he can just produce just like that. So we have that sort of monologue, we have pantomime, we have poems, we have reflective stories, all sorts of different ways of sharing with children the stories from the Bible. So I'm going to ask Megan to take over.
Thank you, Lorraine. We're just kind of over halfway through. So before I start my bit, or I guess that's part of my bit actually, and you've hit a lot of information. I imagine you've probably all written pages and pages of notes already. I just want to ask you to just take a deep breath, and if you feel comfortable, just close your eyes for about 15 seconds. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions just to think about. And the first is, what has brought you here this evening? It's 7:30 at night. Why are you here? Why a holiday club? And then why you? Why are you doing this holiday club? Perhaps you're a minister, a church leader, a paid children, family, youth worker. But I suspect many of us here are volunteers. So why did you say yes? When somebody asked you if you would help out, why did you say yes? I'd just like to open your eyes for me, come back into the room. I've been thinking about those questions myself, and perhaps when you were thinking about that a minute ago, you thought, well, we need volunteers. The church needs volunteers. So I'm going to help, which is great. Perhaps your own children or your grandchildren are going to be attending the holiday club. So perhaps you want to help out of a sense of responsibility or a duty to help and support. Or perhaps, and I really hope this is true, perhaps you know that it's going to be a great experience. You know it's going to be hard work, but you know that it is important work. And the reason you're here tonight is because you want to do it well. You want to put the effort in and the hard work in. It's going to be a valuable experience, and you're going to get so much from it. Learning, laughing and journeying together with the children and the families, and touching back to a little bit about what Hannah said with the team. So the first thing that I just want to talk to you about is a section in the Holiday Club resource, which is the reflections for the team. They're on page 18 in your holiday book when you decide to print it out, or however you decide to access it. And what they are is they are a short Bible, a short piece of scripture, a short Bible story, and a couple of questions for you and your team to reflect on, pray about and share with each other at the start of your holiday club or at the end of your holiday club session, however you want to do it. But it's just preparation and planning. They are really key, but you know, enjoying the experience and having that experience as a team and having it rooted, like I think it was Hannah again who said it, rooted in God and rooted in scripture, just adds that extra layer of how valuable and amazing the week or the day or however you choose to do it in your context could be. So do have a read of them, like I say, page 18, and use them in a way that is going to be helpful to your team. There's some really good questions in there to get you thinking about why you are doing what you're doing, and why children and why holiday clubs. So yeah, I just wanted to bring your attention to that. The second thing I'm going to spend literally about 30 seconds talking about, because it is also in your book and it gives you lots of ideas. It's on page 6. And it's about decorating your venue. And I'm going to share my screen at this stage. Share screen, Megan. There we go. Share. Slideshow. Can you guys see that? Lovely. Our theme, of course, is time traveling. And really, I guess my biggest piece of advice is just think about your own space and think about your own budget, and do as big or as little as you want, but just make that space somewhere exciting for a child to walk into. Okay, I'm thinking, you know, and there are examples in the book, but clocks, those spiral kind of party decorations you can get, you know, you're kind of set in a crazy science lab, you know, so you can print screens off that looks like panels or TV screens and stick them on your walls. Use the space that you've got to your advantage. At the focal point, what we're asking you to kind of each day is that you are going to enter into a travel machine. So I've got a few examples of what that could look like in your space. So here is a ginormous cardboard time machine that you could have as the focal point. Here is one, I'm not sure what that's made out of. It looks like bin liners, but thinking maybe fabrics, drapes, you know, use what you've got and what you can gather. You might have somebody in your church family or in your, you know, who is not kind of coming to help out at Holiday Club, but you might know that he or she is really good at building things, or they would love this job. And there's one that's used lots of tin foils, lots of cogs. They've even incorporated, look how old this picture must be, because that's a full-on huge television. But yeah, so just really use your imagination with the venue, and use the space. You know, if you don't want to build a ginormous cardboard one, maybe you've got an adjoining smaller room and you could decorate a door, you know, and you could go through the door when you get to the time traveling section of your of the session. So yeah, these are just some ideas, but really look at what you've got and make it work for your context. And the last thing I wanted to say is talk about decorating your venue, but also decorate yourself, you know, take the opportunity to be somebody different, you know, and the children will love that. Years and years ago, when I was doing kind of face-to-face youth and children's work, somebody said to me, and it's always stuck with me, that the child that participates the most will only participate as much as the least participating adult, if that makes sense. So please give yourself permission to be silly and to laugh and to journey with the children. So whatever that would look like, it's a bit of a cliche and a bit of a stereotype, I'm sorry, but I'm thinking mad, crazy scientist people. But just have fun with it. That is the main thing that I'm saying. That's it, Lorraine, from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. I'm really keen to dress up myself now, having seen that last picture. Okay, I'm just going to talk you through a little bit about what a typical session might look like if you were to use our resource. So again, I'm going to share my screen. Sorry, Stephen. So I'm going to, first of all, just show you we've sort of looked at a typical day, what a typical day at Holiday Club might look like. So you can find that in the Running a Holiday Club section. But let's go for listening to God. So this listening to God is about the story of Samuel. So as the children arrive, there'll be an arrival activity for them to do. So here we have Judy's daughter looking very pleased at the fact that she's been made to wear some big ears. But this is an activity that children can do as they arrive, just so that they're not sort of bored waiting for others to come. We have the Bible story, which we've taken each time from the International Children's Version, which is a really nice version that's easy to understand for this age group. Then we have a short interview. The interview is each end of the story being told, because we travel back in time. So from their activity at the beginning, the children will get into the time machine, travel back in time and meet a child from Bible times. So we're going to ask that child 4 questions, and the 4 questions stay the same each time. So we can actually get the children asking the question. Then comes the story. The Eli and Samuel story we've done as a pantomime. So that will be available hopefully as a video that you can show, or else you can act it out yourselves if you've got some budding actors in your group. And as I said, each time we use a different style of storytelling. And then we finish off the interview, because our child is then going to give us something to take back to the present time with us to help us to remember the story. Each time the story is linked to a Bible verse that links to Jesus, something that Jesus said. We've got a video link, if you'd rather use that than the story we give. Some wondering questions that children can discuss with each other and with the volunteers while they're doing things like craft. We've gone a bit over the top with craft suggestions, mainly because your group might be different to somebody else's group. So we've done some science-based activities and we've done some general craft-based activities. And they're just suggestions. You might have your own, but they're just some ideas that you could use for your small groups to do. We have some small group prayers. We've suggested 2 games which are linked to that theme. So these 2, because it's about listening to God, we've got some listening games, but obviously you might have games of your own. And we've also children always like doing things involving food. So for each thing, for each session, we've got a recipe that's linked to the theme that the children can make in just a couple of minutes. So here, for example, is how noisy is your snack? So a snack that's put together with things that are different levels of noisiness for them to listen to as they eat. Then as we bring the day to an end, we've got a whole group prayer that everybody can do together. And we sort of like to say that this isn't a prayer for the children to do. This is a prayer for everybody. So however tempting it may be to go off and start doing the tidying up while the children have their closing prayer, let's all do this prayer together. And why not invite parents and carers to come back a little bit earlier and join in that prayer time too. So that is a typical session for the Time Travellers Holiday Club. And I'm going to pass over to Judy, who's going to talk to you about the appendices. This is something that we've done that's a little bit different to if you've used Scripture Union or something like that before. we've added a few appendices. So Judy, there she is. Over to you.
Thanks, Lorraine. So your typical day in a holiday club might involve lots of children between the ages of 5 and 11 or 5 and 10, but you might have some under 5s. What on earth are you going to do with them? You might think, well, we've made an appendix on some things to do with the under 5s. So if you've got a group of under 5s within your holiday club, there are things that you can put in place for them to engage with the stories in a simple way. Lots of sensory materials, some role play, some simple songs and games, as well as being part of the whole story. So they might be able to listen to the story and engage in that way, but still have activities which will make them explore the story in a different way. So that's one of our appendices. But what about on our typical day, if we've got a whole lot of older siblings, the 11s to 14s, what about them? We've put an appendix together for them, which looks at going a bit deeper, asking questions about the passage, maybe doing a game and then asking questions about how they felt about that. What does it make them consider in terms of listening or listening to God? So there's an appendix there for that. But what about if we wanted to do things all together? What about if we wanted to run an intergenerational holiday club? Intergenerational offers more than just all ages together in the same place. It creates interactions between the generations, and it enables relationships to blossom and be enriched by everybody. Everyone comes away better off by an intergenerational relationship. And it's okay at some times to have people in their same age group or same peer group, but make that the exemption rather than the norm. So it might be a bit chaotic and messy and a bit random, but people get to choose what they want to do and who they want to do it with. And it might take a bit longer as people have time to work to develop this, but the relationships that grow out of an intergenerational holiday club can be very strong and very enriching to everybody. They work together as a group. So there might be somebody in their 70s helping a 5-year-old explore the story of Samuel. There might be a 20-year-old who's working with a 9-year-old. Again, exploring the story across their generations. It can be offered maybe as a one-off. Maybe you want to do time travelling as a fun day, an intergenerational fun day. So taking one of the days and make it a whole fun day. Or maybe you want to do a weekly get-together and do each session over a period of time. So it doesn't need to be done every day over a course of a week. It could be done in a completely different way if you were looking at intergenerational holiday club, which gives you a bit more time to explore the chaos and the randomness of an intergenerational holiday club. And then what about if you had a church that didn't have any children, but you had lots of people who were retired? What about running a vintage holiday club? This appendix isn't on our website yet, but it is coming soon. And in the same way as an intergenerational holiday club, it could be used as a separate day activity. It could be done as a weekly activity. It could be done as a holiday club over a few days. These kind of holiday clubs for vintage holiday clubs can be particularly good for churches who really struggle. They want to run a holiday club, but they don't have children and they don't maybe have the capacity to run something for children, but they are very good at working with the retired and elderly community. So you could take this club into a care home, for example. So these are our appendices. It just enriches what we've already put together. You could take some of the things and the suggestions from these appendices and put them into your holiday club as well. So don't be limited just because this is for under fives. You might find that there are some children who would do really well with the under five stuff in the main holiday club. And likewise, you might have some 9-10-year-olds who could really benefit from some of the things that are in the 11s to 14 stuff. So don't be limited, and don't limit yourself to just the material in the main session. I think that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Judy.